The earliest settlement in Whitby for the Vikings is reckoned to be under Church Street car park.
As I mentioned at the start, a number of these, all these accents and dialects have been around ever since English arrived on these shores, or what we now call English. They've evolved over time and are still changing to this day. There is nothing about the physical or genetic makeup, if you like, of individual speakers that prompts them to speak in this way. It's a matter of the fact that speech in Yorkshire has evolved from the first settlers who brought what we now call English to Yorkshire about 1,000 years ago. It would have been a different type of speech than was brought by different settlers to the south of England, say, and it will have evolved in different ways now. For many, many hundreds of years, probably up until the last century, most of these accents and dialects evolved in isolation. People didn't come into contact with each other, so they were fossilised and changed slightly. In recent years, perhaps the last 100 years, as a result of greater mobility, people have of course moved from different parts of the country, from the north to the south or the south to the north, and people are increasingly coming in contact with speakers from other parts of the UK. And so they are beginning to adopt new pronunciation patterns dependent on the people that they meet and they mix with. However, that you can trace certain pronunciation patterns back a long way. So, for instance, in Yorkshire, there are a number of words that have their origins in the fact that there was a lot of Viking settlement about 1,500 years ago or so. For a long period of time, settlers from Norway, from Denmark, settled in parts of the east coast of England, from the northeast right down through Yorkshire into places like Lincolnshire. And you can certainly see that in place names in that part of the country, but also dialect words that are used. So, for instance, speakers in some parts of the north of England use the word bairn for a child. Now, that's the modern Norwegian word barn, which is still the Norwegian word for child. So the fact that speakers in that part of the country say bairn rather than child can obviously be traced back to the fact that there were settlements from Scandinavian speakers at some point in time. And there are a number of words like that.
This is John, and he's from West Yorkshire, and his language is slightly different to mine.
That's true.
For somebody like you coming into an area like Whitby to pick up,
You do pick it up, yeah.
How we say things to how you say things.
Yeah. I mean, we used, West Yorkshire, we used deer. All right, deer. Here it's hun.
Yes.
Yeah, all right, hun. Yeah.
For honey instead of...
Yeah. Let's use that.
Cod instead of cold.
Yeah.
You know, it's surprising. As I say, we're not that far apart, really.
Oh, no.
But...
No. Hour and a half in a car.
Just a few miles apart.
Yeah.
It's the difference on words is
totally
quite amazing.
Yeah. I mean, you find you pick it up a lot. You know what I mean? I say pun now.
Yeah, instead of pound. Yeah.
Instead of pound. A pun.
Yeah. You know, it's not worth pund in the pocket. Yeah. And it's
different things you do pick up.
The earliest settlement in Whitby for the Vikings is reckoned to be under Church Street car park.
Yes.
Where St Michael's Church used to stand. And when they dug down to do the footings for the new drainage system, they found the remains of a 17th century boat in the dry dock.
Yeah. And that's where all the sailing ships used to dock, wasn't it?
Yeah. So that's one of 5 dry docks that Whitby had. And one nobody knew about. But there was a boat actually left, the remains of a small boat were actually found in the bottom. The other Viking claims to Whitby, or links, are the names of the town, which is BY, names of the streets such as Haggersgate, Baxtergate and Floragate, which is now Flowergate. And the outlying villages were all settled, especially Sandsend, Dunsley, etc., by the Vikings.
So, although there is nothing that you can trace, as I say, genetically about speech in terms of the different physical makeup of people in the UK, there are certain links you can make to pronunciation and vocabulary that have been present in certain parts of the UK as a result of settlement and migration patterns. And that's still true to this day. When large numbers of Scottish speakers, for instance, moved to a town in Northamptonshire, which is in the Midlands in England, the town's called Corby, and at the start of last century, thousands of Scottish speakers settled in Corby, and to this day there are speakers in Corby in Northamptonshire, which is right in the middle of England, who speak with a Scottish accent. Now, that would strike most people as peculiar, but the reason they do is because their parents came as Scottish speakers of Scottish English, and of course they spoke like their parents, and there were enough numbers of speakers who spoke in that way for those pronunciation patterns to be retained. As time progresses, that generation will obviously die out, and younger speakers will begin to speak again with a Midlands accent. So you get pockets of speakers for whom recent or even historic migration patterns have an impact on their speech.